If we're talking about a theory of everything, the first question we have to establish, does God exist?
Yes.
Simple as
Yes.
that.
Well, it's the identity has the reality has an identity. Okay? The identity is that as which something exists. Okay? Matter of fact, when you say the word reality, you're naming an identity. You're identifying something.
I'm smiling because your answer on this is so beautiful. It just reminds me of Moses at the burning bush. And Moses at the burning bush says, "Who shall I tell the people that you are?" Talking to God. And God says, "Tell them I am that I am."
That's right.
I am identity itself. I'm being himself.
That's exactly right.
The smartest man alive confidently claims that God exists, and not only does he exist, he is a personal God that you can have a personal relationship with. And he also claims that he can, quote, prove the existence of God, the soul, and an afterlife using mathematics. But does his claim matter? Sure, he has the highest IQ in the world, but should his claims be convincing to you or anyone? Are they convincing to me? Let's find out.
If we're talking about a theory of everything, the first question we have to establish, does God exist?
Yes.
Simple as
Yes.
that.
Well, it's the identity has the reality has an identity. Okay? The identity is that as which something exists. Okay? Matter of fact, when you say the word reality, you're naming an identity. You're identifying something.
I'm smiling because your answer on this is so beautiful. It just reminds me of Moses at the burning bush. And Moses at the burning bush says, "Who shall I tell the people that you are?" Talking to God. And God says, "Tell them I am that I am."
That's right.
I am identity itself. I'm being himself.
That's exactly right. And that's what the CTMU says. It just comes up with the mathematical structure that you need to build a reality out of that. You see? So you come up with that identity and then you search it for its properties. You see, once you've built the preliminary framework, then you start deducing the properties of this identity, and you find out that those properties match those of God as described in most of the world's major religions. When you look at what they've all got, you come down to the same thing. All right? Everybody has the Tao, or the way, that's the way reality works, right? And everybody, has sunyata, which is pure syntax, right? Pure cognition with no instantiation, no content, right? And then you've got what the Abrahamic religions call God. It's all the same thing, okay? But what are its properties? Okay, are its properties such that you can deny the existence of God, or are its properties such that God definitely has to exist? And the answer is, God exists.
Christopher Langan's model and claim that God not only exists, but is a personal God like the Christian God is fascinating for many, especially in an age of skepticism and atheism, which has been plaguing modern academia for far too long. In response to his teachers denying his request, this is just an interesting fun fact, for more challenging material, Langan began teaching himself in high school advanced math, physics, philosophy, Latin, and Greek. He earned a perfect score on his SATs, despite taking a nap during the test. But do his truth claims matter? While he's considered a credible expert by many because he has the highest IQ in the world, it is important to note that he is A, self-taught, and B, he is an independent thinker rather than a widely recognized authority. He presents a very interesting and convincing model called the Cognitive-Theoretic model of the universe, CTMU, which is basically a cross between John Archibald Wheeler's participatory universe and Stephen Hawking's imaginary time theory of cosmology. But does it move the needle? Should it? In regards to our belief in God, whether God exists or not. Should this convince you one way or the other? Well, the answer really is no. It is At best, you could say it is a puzzle piece. All right. It's one puzzle piece out of many. The fact is, many people, myself included, value independent thinkers outside of our very flawed and biased academic system. Socrates, for example, was a humble stonemason who was rejected by the prominent intellectuals of his day, right, the sophists, and received only a basic Greek education. He was largely self-taught, as was Nikola Tesla, for example, and many others. Christopher Langan, in my mind, clearly falls into that group of thinkers, and with a mind that seems likely to match, if not surpass, even the greatest of these, by all empirical, objective metrics that we have access to. But should this be taken as strong evidence for the existence of God? And again, the answer is no. This provides indirect evidence for God, you could say. So this would be an appeal to authority, not necessarily a logical fallacy, as long as we consider this supplementary indirect evidence, right? Then it stacks up. It should move the needle, at least to a degree. But if we take it as anything beyond the supplementary, beyond indirect evidence, then the logic, of course, is flawed, right? We'd be committing the appeal to authority logical fallacy and would be committing the unpardonable sin of cherry-picking evidence as well. So we have to be able to weigh the evidence on both sides of the coin. So is this helpful to me in my quest to prove the existence of God? Because I do believe that God exists, and there are many, many puzzle pieces that you can put together and realize that. But is this helpful to me? I would say yes, but a qualified yes, right? It's just a single puzzle piece, and a relatively small puzzle piece. It's something, it's not nothing, but yeah, there are many other pieces necessary to come to a reasonably sound conclusion that God does exist. And there are plenty of strong, logically airtight arguments out there that move the needle far more than any single appeal to authority.
God
The properties of the central substance and central principle of reality, those properties are attributed to God, including, of course, things like you have the three O's: omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence, but then you've also got consciousness. God has to be sentient.
So we're not just defining God out of existence. Sometimes you'll hear people say God exists, but they'll give God such a weak and shallow definition that the God that they're describing has no relation to the God that we conceive of. You're saying, no, this God is God. God himself is conscious and therefore personal?
Yes, you can establish a personal relationship with God. We're images of God. You know what an image is? It's basically the product of a mapping. God maps himself into each human being, right? That's a very personal thing that God is doing for us, right? And I don't understand how anybody can say that it's any different. We reflect the structure of the universe. Each one of us, we're carried by it. Everything we do, we exist in a medium. What is that medium? Right? Where did it come from?
Yeah.
What holds it together? What is the unifying coherence, the source of coherence of that medium?
Now, is your claim a pantheistic claim that God is the universe, or the universe is God, and that's that? Or no? Or is God outside of the universe and created?
God is greater than, well, what is the universe?
Damned if I know.
You ever hear of the simulation hypothesis?
Yes.
Okay, well, the simulation hypothesis is basically the idea that the reality we see around us, physical reality, is simulated on some sort of an automaton or a computer.
Yeah, some aliens somewhere have just, they've fooled us.
Right, exactly. The idea is that you've got some kind of an automaton running, you've got a simulation running on it. And God, it's more panentheistic. Do you know what panentheism is?
I do. I think I do. But that means that we are in God. Let me know how I've gone wrong. We are in God, and God is in us. And it is not merely that God and the creation are one and the same, but they are quite related. Is that something approaching panentheism?
A little bit, yes.
Okay.
There's the idea is that you've got the physical universe that you see around you, but God is not confined to the physical universe.
Okay.
See, there's an ordinary pantheist assumes that God is somehow confined to the universe, that there is just what we see around us, and God is in every piece of it. God is distributed over it.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit more complex than that, because this part of the universe that we see around us cannot exist just by itself.
Yeah.
Okay? There are certain things that it entails. And when you go into those entailments, that's how you get to God. That's how you get to the identity of reality. Okay? And now to get back to the reality of self-simulation, or at least that's what I call it, self-simulation. But to get back to the simulation hypothesis, that we're living in the display of that simulation. In addition to the display, there is also a processing aspect. Okay? And God, it captures both of those things. He captures both the display and the processor. But the idea of being a state and being a process, those are two different things.
Yep.
In the ordinary way of looking at it. Okay? It turns out that you can't properly describe reality and causation at all unless you put those things together somehow. And that's what it takes God to do. Okay? God provides the processing functionality for your state. You have an internal state, an external state. You're a material human being, right? Like, to explain how that is changing through time, and maintaining its coherence through time, even as it changes, that's what you need God for. It turns out that in order to quantize that theory that I was talking about, that theory of identity, where you've got the display and you've got the processor, and it's handling both. It turns out that in order to handle both of those things, you need a certain kind of quantum. That quantum is called an identity operator. God is the identity. So obviously these little quanta, they have to be, they're doing things, they're processing, so we can call them operators, right? They are identity operators. Okay, the identity operator has, basically it takes input from the outside world, recognizes it or accepts it using syntax, processes it, and then returns it to the world as external state. Okay, so things come in, then they're processed, right? There's throughput, which is, you could call that the subjective or internal state of the identity operator, and then it's returned to the external universe.
But are you attributing now?
So what I'm saying is that's consciousness. And I'm saying that consciousness exists in every part of the universe, because those are the quanta.
That's what I'm asking. Are you telling me that this table is conscious?
In that sense, yes. Generically conscious. But it's relying on our consciousness to do it. There's levels of quanta, okay? These are tertiary quanta. They're all put together using physical localistic forces, right? But those are underdeterminative. They don't fully determine what happens. Why? The Heisenberg uncertainty principle, for example, it tells you that, the quantum rules, they're probabilistic.
Right.
They don't actually determine events, okay? So what determines events? We do. We don't know how we do it, but we do it. When everybody's will is put together, we're all creating the best possible universe we can for ourselves. And God is what harmonizes all of our different perspectives and makes things happen for all of us at the same time. And if we were doing things correctly, this would be the best of all possible worlds. Sadly, however, we oftentimes make mistakes.
But what about you? Is this convincing evidence in your eyes? I mean, he is the smartest man in the world, at least as far as IQ goes. He has the highest IQ on the planet. And when you hear him talk, he's pretty convincing, right? He's very, very intelligent. But for you, is this helpful in any way? Also, which arguments for God convince you the most, and why? All right, that's all I have for you guys for today. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, comment all of the stuff that gets that algorithm fired up and ready to rank me high and drive good traffic and expand the reach of this channel, which it's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. So keep your eye out for it. That's coming. I'll see you in the next one.